Right now at 65,000 votes and a seat on our state's highest court are at stake as judges hear arguments months after Election Day over the 2024 race for North Carolina Supreme Court. Republican Jefferson Griffin is calling for those 65,000 votes to be tossed out. He trails Democratic incumbent Allison Riggs by more than 700 votes after several recounts. WRAL's Capitol Bureau Chief Laura Leslie is live in Richmond, Virginia, where arguments before the 4th Federal Court of Appeals just wrapped up. Laura.
Deborah, it was a feisty 90-minute set of arguments today, and the appeals panel peppering attorneys for Riggs and Griffin with questions. You know, at issue, the big issue here, does Griffin's bid to throw out these 65,000 voters belong in the state court or in the federal courts? And we learned today that question may end up in front of the U.S. Supreme Court before we get this race settled. Democrats argue that Republican candidate Jefferson Griffin's bid to throw out 65,000 votes violates those voters' constitutionally protected rights, and they say that's why the case should be handled by the federal court. But Republicans say this is a state elections matter that the state courts should decide. Republicans also hold a majority of seats on those courts. The case is currently being heard in both state and federal courts at the same time, a very unusual situation. And the federal judges said that complicates the issue. Senior Judge Paul Niemeyer said the federal courts don't like to step in and take away cases that the state is currently hearing. But attorneys for Riggs argued that that was Griffin's strategy to try to keep it out of federal court. Niemeyer seemed to be open to the idea of sending the case up to the U.S. Supreme Court to let them decide who should have jurisdiction. Meantime, Riggs supporters gathered outside the courthouse with signs. One of the judges remarked how unusual it was to have so many people at an oral argument. Now, Allison Riggs was at today's arguments, but she and her legal team declined to comment for us. We also spoke with Griffin's attorney today. He also declined our interview request. Laura Leslie, WRAL News, live in Richmond, Virginia.